Welcome to our special town hall today. Our guest speaker is Dr. Suleiman Alibhai, who is known to all of you. I just want to say that these town hall meetings started 5 years ago, and this was April 2020. And time flies. It was during COVID when Dr. Alibhai's clinic was closed, and we started the town hall meetings. Dr. Alibhai, I don't want to take more time because I'm sure people would like to listen to you, and the floor, the mic are yours.
All right. Well, good morning or good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me.
Loud and clear.
Some of you can even see me, right? It's nice to see so many of you all here together in one place. It's nice that we're still able to do this. And like Tara said, we started this a long time ago during COVID, just to make sure that we weren't all getting isolated and depressed, being alone, stuck in the house. And my gosh, how time has passed. And here we are. I'm glad we have continued to do these town hall meetings. I haven't been able to participate in them lately because my schedule also has become very, very busy. I know some of you are aware it's taking a long, long time to even get an appointment to see me, and I apologized sincerely. I wish it wasn't that way, and I'm really counting on this year sorting out some of these issues with the schedule so that people are not waiting so long to see me. I'm going to talk a little bit about this whole process of what I do and the low vision rehabilitation, and how doing this with the Prevention of Blindness Society works, and how all of you can take advantage of the resources that we have available beyond just seeing me. So to start off with, I am an optometrist, and I'm specialized in vision rehabilitation. So that means I work with people who already are seeing an eye doctor. Most of the patients I see already see a retina specialist, a glaucoma specialist, or they've been to a neuro-ophthalmologist. Everyone I see has been referred to me by another specialist, and they're being referred to me because the issues with their eyes are not going to be necessarily fixed by that specialist. And some of this has become chronic, meaning you may find that just a simple pair of glasses doesn't allow you to see normally, to read a book, to drive a car, to recognize a face, to thread a needle. Whatever it is, you've developed some kind of vision condition which, despite seeing your specialist, has still left you with some deficits and some difficulties in performing what we call day-to-day living activities. So that's the first thing, is all of you, please, should seek out the best medical treatment you can get for your eyes from your regular eye doctors, be they optometrists, ophthalmologists, from your specialists, be they retina specialists, glaucoma specialists, neuro-ophthalmologists, and continue to receive that care and treatment, because vision rehabilitation is not a replacement for any of those things, but it's designed to supplement. It's an adjunct to doing those things. So oftentimes, for those of you who are new to this process, you may find that your doctor says to you, I'm doing the best I can, and at this point, I'm going to try and stabilize your vision and get it as stable as possible, but I'm not going to be able to fix your vision and get it back to normal. And so they might say to you, well, it may be appropriate for you to seek out some vision rehabilitation. And that's when you might get a referral to see me. The low vision appointment may feel a lot like an eye exam, because when I see patients, I still measure your vision. I still want to see how well your glasses are working. I want to know whether you have good peripheral vision. But the appointment is really about how you are functioning with the vision you have. Normally, when you go to an eye doctor, the whole emphasis is on how well can you see the eye chart. If you can do well on the eye chart, then the doctor's happy and you're happy. If you just need glasses that fixes the vision and makes it normal, then you want to get that prescription and get on with life. Many times patients say to me, I have a vision condition, I just need stronger glasses. So many people are under the impression that by coming for vision rehabilitation, there are some special quote unquote low vision glasses that corrects the vision problem. And that's not entirely correct. That's not how it works. Glasses are compensating for anatomical differences in all of our eyeballs. I often tell people to compare it to buying shoes. We buy shoes, but there are different sizes of shoes. Some people have small feet, they have small shoe sizes. Some people have big feet, they have bigger shoe sizes. Some people have narrow feet, some people have wide feet. So the eyeball is similar. It has a certain size. A perfectly shaped eyeball is perfectly round like a ball. And it doesn't necessarily need glasses. You are in focus that eye can see well at all times. But some of us may have an eyeball that's too long. We call that myopia or nearsightedness. So we're in focus at near, but we're out of focus at distance. So glasses are used to correct for that. Or some of us have eyeballs that are too small. So we're in focus at distance, but we're out of focus at near. So we wear glasses to correct that. And some of us have something that's similar, but it's a combination of these things. And the eyeball may be, instead of round like a ball, more like a football, shape of a football. And that's what we call astigmatism. So some parts of the eye are in focus at distance and some parts of the eye in focus at near. And that's what we call astigmatism. So typically, when you have a prescription given to you for glasses, you're correcting for that. You're correcting for nearsightedness, farsightedness, and or astigmatism. And you can be nearsighted with astigmatism and farsighted with astigmatism. But that's not what's happening in the low vision exam. When you're coming in to see me, oftentimes you're hoping that somehow the glasses are going to fix macular degeneration, glaucoma, retinitis pigmentosa, or diabetic retinopathy, or something like that. But that's not what's going to happen. If you are already wearing the correct prescription, if your glasses are already correcting you for being nearsighted or farsighted or your astigmatism, then I'm not going to be able to suddenly fix the glaucoma, macular degeneration, or whatever else is going on in the eyes by changing any of those things. Those things don't change just because you have macular degeneration, glaucoma, whatever. You're still nearsighted, still farsighted, still have astigmatism. So all of you should keep that in mind, that you still need glasses. You still need to correct for that shape of the eye, if you like. And when you're coming in for the low vision evaluation, we're going to try to supplement whatever your glasses can do or are not able to do. So the biggest problems people complain to me about are, I have trouble reading, I have trouble seeing signs, I want to keep my driver's license, I want to be able to walk around safely, I want to be independent in my home. These are the kinds of typical things people will come to me and say, these are the things, since my vision has changed, that I need help with. And the low vision evaluation is about assessing strategies, compensatory strategies. again, I'm emphasizing this word compensatory. It's not a fix. It doesn't mean I prescribe something that fixes the vision and everybody can see normally again. It's about using the vision you have and finding ways to enhance it using compensatory strategies. The three most common compensatory strategies that we use are magnification, lighting, and contrast changing. So magnification, I think, makes sense to everyone because most of you will have experimented with magnifiers. And think of the glasses, even at the drugstore, those reading glasses that many people would use who have normal vision. Those are a form of magnification as well. So basic magnification can start in glasses, and the most basic form of that would be what you find in the grocery store on the shelf, and those numbers are very low magnification. 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, things like that. Most people say to me, I know I can't get anything stronger than a 3 in the drugstore or at CVS for reading glasses. And that's true. That's about as much magnification as people who don't have any other eye condition, who just need to compensate for the fact that it's harder to see up close as we get older. They can use those glasses, and up to 3 is usually more than enough magnification for people with normal vision without any other conditions in their eyes. But when you have low vision, if you have issues where, like I said, you have macular degeneration, you have glaucoma, you have diabetic retinopathy, or some other condition of the eye, then that amount of magnification may be inadequate. So the question is, well, how much magnification can be prescribed? So there is a limit on lenses. People often say, well, go as strong as you can, Dr. Alibhai, go as strong as you can because my eyes are so bad. I need the strongest magnification you can give me. Well, there is a limit because you can only make a lens so strong. It's not unusual for my patients to need magnification like 8, 10, 12. These numbers are much, much higher than the 1, 2, and 3 that I'm telling you can pick up at the drugstore. But it comes with a catch. So it isn't as simple as saying, well, I usually hold things at arm's length and the 3 magnification, and that could be just reading glasses 3, a bifocal that's 3, a progressive lens that's 3, whatever it is. You say that's not enough. And I say, yes, I've calculated you need about 12. Well, I first of all won't be able to put that in a bifocal or a pair of progressive lenses. You'll have to have a separate pair of reading glasses, which are 12. But 12 will require you to hold things almost at your nose. So the higher the magnification in glasses, the closer you have to hold things. And so that's the first disappointment many of my patients experience. They'll say, great, I'm glad you figured out I need 8. And I'll say, okay, try these 8 reading glasses that are higher magnification. And you say, my gosh, I'm holding things so close. I don't want to hold it up at my nose. I want to hold it out further. So this is where the first thing that you have to learn is this is the first compensatory strategy, that you can have stronger reading glasses, but it will mean you have to hold things much closer. The higher the number, the closer you're going to have to hold it. That's why many people say, well, I picked up a magnifier and it says 2x, 3x, 4x. Just so you know, x means multiply by 4. 2x means 2 times bigger, but in those numbers that we're using, it means multiply by 4. So 2x is 8 diopters. So 8 holding in your hand doesn't have to be held up close because you're holding it close to the paper. So sometimes patients of mine will say, rather than having to wear it and hold it so close, it's easier to hold a magnifier and do it that way. And it's true. It is easier to hold a magnifier and do things. But then you say, I'm always going to have to pick up a magnifying glass when I want to read and do things. Yes, that is an inconvenience, but at least it can be combined with your own glasses to create enough magnification. So if you're going to hold a magnifier, the next thing is I'd love to have a magnifier that's the size of a page, because when I want to read something, I want to see the whole thing nice and big, nice and magnified. Well, this 2x, 3x, 4x magnification, when you build it into a magnifying glass that you hold in your hand, the higher the number, 2x, 4x, 8x, the smaller the lens becomes. So again, I've had many patients say to me, I went on Amazon and looked for the strongest magnifying glass I could find. It's a 10x. And look what they sent me. It looks like about the size of a quarter. The window, the little magnifying part is so small. I wanted the 10x to be about the size of a page. And again, these are some of the limitations of lenses, of optics. As the magnifier gets stronger, it's going to get smaller. So those create limitations. And many people get frustrated by these limitations of having to use a magnifying glass. Maybe it's 4x, but now they can only read a little bit at a time. They don't see the whole thing at a time. But again, these are things that you have to learn to accept, and these are compensatory strategies. It's like I said, not like just wearing glasses and having normal vision and I see the whole computer screen I'm looking at right now, edge to edge, it's in focus and I'm sitting at least arm's length away. But that isn't going to be the case if you use strong glasses or a magnifier. So what do we do after that if people need more magnification than is available in glasses, or more magnification that's available in a magnifying glass? And we get into this idea of electronic magnifiers, or video magnifiers, or digital magnifiers. Now, early on when I started, if you recall, I said to you, in vision rehabilitation, at least when I'm working with patients, the three main strategies I'm talking about are magnification, glasses, contrast, and or light, or maybe all three of these things. So let me touch on these other things a little bit too. When you experience vision changes, it's not that you just lose the ability to see the smallest line on the eye chart. I know that as eye doctors, the standard of vision is how small can you see? How small can you see these letters on this eye chart, which is projected in front of you? And everybody thinks, well, that's the most important thing, is the smaller I can see, the better off I am. And to some extent, that's true. If you're able to see small, your vision is good. But the real world isn't just about big and small. Most of the objects around us are fairly big. It's only written things that are small. So the other thing to remember is there's a measurement called contrast. Contrast is saying, okay, let's set aside big or small. Let's figure out if things are perfectly big, but they're not black on white. How easy or how difficult is it to see that? So that's called contrast. And you don't typically get a contrast measurement when you go to your regular eye exam, because the only standard that's typically used is look on this chart and see how small you can see. But there is a chart that actually measures contrast. It says, even if things are big enough to see, how much more black on white do they need to be in order to see them? So I have many patients who will say, well, I can read the print if it's bold enough. My trouble is I seem to have trouble seeing the edges of steps and curbs when I'm walking. I seem to have trouble recognizing people's faces. I'm having trouble seeing if the food I'm cooking is done, if the meat is browned enough. I'm having trouble seeing the level of water in a glass when I'm pouring water in a glass. These things have nothing to do with size, they have to do with contrast. So faces are low in contrast. So recognizing people when you have vision issues can be difficult, even if you can see black and white letters on an eye chart well, it may be still difficult to recognize faces because faces have very low contrast. They're not a black and white checkerboard. Gauging the level of liquid in a glass, if it's a clear glass and water, is also a contrast issue. It's hard to do that, even though the glass is big and the amount of water you're pouring in might be a lot, but you have to see that level rising. Stepping off a curb requires good contrast because the edge of a curb may not be painted yellow. It may match the next step you're about to take. So being able to gauge those edges and curbs requires good contrast. Oftentimes, I'll see patients who do very well on the black and white eye chart. And then they'll say, yeah, I do well on this chart because it's black and white, it's well illuminated. But when I pick up the newspaper, I can't read it. And partly the problem is, yes, the newspaper is small, but the ink isn't perfectly black and the background isn't perfectly white. So that's a contrast issue. And we have to factor that in as well. Many of us can overcome contrast issues just by having better light. So again, like I said right at the beginning, the three big things are magnification, contrast, and light. These are the three things we manipulate the most in vision rehabilitation. So oftentimes, if we're in a romantic restaurant, we're trying to read the menu and we're struggling, it may not be just because the print isn't big enough, there isn't enough light. So when you introduce light, you can compensate for contrast as well. If you're looking at the edge of a step or a curb, if there's just better illumination, you can often judge the edge of a step or a curb. So it's really important to keep in mind not just magnification, but the effects of lighting and contrast. And the digital magnifiers, the video magnifiers, these are the things I'm talking about after you've tried glasses, after you've tried optical magnifiers. The digital magnifiers can compensate for light and contrast. So they're using electronics to make the image more easy to see. And digital magnifiers have the ability to take something that's printed very faint and make it look black or on white, and it can even make it look white on black. Some of us are familiar with that because we have what's called dark mode on our smartphones, so we can see white letters against a black background. That's very high contrast. And that's why many of you are now using a lot of the conventional tools that everybody, even the sighted world, uses. A smartphone, an iPad, a tablet, a Kindle, all of these things are digital magnifiers to some extent, because when I have an iPad, I can make things bigger. The print is always nice and bold and black on white, at least for printed things. I know sometimes on websites, they still write red things on a yellow background, and that gets difficult to see. But typically, if it's just printed things, you can see it better on a tablet, on a digital device, because the contrast is good. It's very black, and it's self-illuminated. So it's producing its own light. So we can now combine lighting, contrast, and magnification in one gadget. And this technology is really what's changing the playing field here. When I first started in practice, there were no such things as iPads. We didn't even have smartphones at that time. And the only way my patients were seeing things, if they needed a lot of magnification, were to use these big machines, video magnifiers, CCTVs, that you put the print underneath it, it gets projected on a screen, and you use the dial to blow up the magnification. And that's how people were managing their mail, their bills. That's how they were reading their books. They were putting newspapers under these machines. And these machines are still available and they're still being used. But nowadays, we all seem to have access to iPads, tablets, smartphones, and those things already have the ability to make things big. So oftentimes I'm telling many of my patients, I know you're struggling with the newspaper and we know the ink isn't black and white enough. Perhaps you can read it on your tablet. You can pick up the iPad, put the app on the tablet, and it's going to come out big and bold. You can change the size and make it easier to see. So the technology we have in the world today is really making things a lot more accessible now than it used to be. Even our mail and bills can be sent to us electronically, digitally, as PDFs that we can enlarge on our iPads, even on our computers. And for many of you nowadays, I see that you all have this type of technology, but you may not have realized how much you can leverage this technology to make some of these things that you want to be able to see to do much easier. The technology has evolved so much that they now all have auditory in it. And again, in the old days, I used to prescribe the talking books from the Library of Congress. In the old days, the Library of Congress used to send everybody a tape recorder, the good old fashioned tapes that we had with reel in them. And, you'd put the tape in and you had to press forward, wind and rewind, and you have to send the tapes back. The Library of Congress still sends out talking books, but it's now an electronic, digital tape player, if you like. It isn't the tape. You get a memory card, basically, that you plug into this machine. It's electronic, so you can speed up the voice. You can change the tone of the voice. You can rewind, forward wind. You can mark where you stopped. And it's made it a lot more accessible to listen to things if it's difficult to see it. In the same way, your tablets, your gadgets have this auditory ability too. So the apps for the Washington Post, for example, have auditory built into it. And you can choose to read the article visually, magnify it, or you can just switch to auditory and have the article read to you. There are apps like the Seeing AI, which I know many of you use, which can be used to read things external. Most things we're getting on our iPad are being sent to us, but what if it was something external to us, like a label, like a document, like a price tag? Well, your smartphones have incredibly sharp cameras nowadays, and using these apps, the apps take advantage of the camera on your smartphone, and you can point your smartphone at something external to you, like I said, a price tag, a label, a document, and it'll actually capture the document and read it back to you. So we now have different options here to compensate for the changes in your vision that prevent regular glasses from fixing everything and from seeing things normally. You can still use optical magnification, like I mentioned earlier, stronger reading glasses. You can still use handheld magnifiers of different strengths. Those have optical limitations. Like I mentioned, the stronger reading glasses, holding things close. Magnifiers get stronger and they get smaller and smaller. But then we have digital magnifiers. Now it's a screen that's doing the magnifying. So we're not limited in the size, but the camera in these digital magnifiers can only still pick up so much at a time. So if you keep making things bigger, even on a digital system, after a while, it gets a little bit limiting because you're only seeing so much at a time. Now we have the tablets and the smartphones, which have digital magnification, but also what we call OCR, optical character reading technology or capability. So we can leverage these kinds of devices for seeing things externally. Even the Library of Congress provides an app. If you don't want their machine, you can receive the app, and it's called Bard. Log in and choose your books digitally and listen to them on your iPad, on your smartphone. So technology is now changing things so much that it's making life easier when it comes to the printed material, whether it's printed material that's external to you, like I said, books and magazines and things like that, or if it's printed material that you can have it sent to you digitally, like your mail, your bank statements, and your bills, and so on and so forth. And writing, you almost don't write things now because you digitally pay your bills. You can digitally write checks and things like that. So the technology has made a lot of this a lot easier to do now. So what about things for distance? Things for distance, people say to me, I want to be able to read a street sign because I'm still driving, and I want to be able to see that sign at a comfortable distance. So again, everybody says, can you make my glasses stronger just so I can read the sign better and I can keep my driver's license? The glasses only correct for nearsightedness, farsightedness, and astigmatism, like I explained earlier. If we need magnification for distance, then we're having to use telescopes. Everybody knows about telescopes because, you use a telescope to see the stars and the moon. But telescopes, when they're mounted on a pair of glasses, are called bioptics. And I know you hear a lot about bioptics because both in Maryland and Virginia, the MVA in Maryland and the DMV in Virginia do have a provision to drive with a bioptic, with a telescope. Now, I have to be honest here and say to you, not all my patients are going to be able to use a bioptic and drive with it at the same time, or qualify to see well enough through the bioptic and use it in a practical way when they're driving. So I don't want everybody to think, okay, the next thing I need is a bioptic so I can get my driver's license and get driving. Even Maryland and Virginia have very strict guidelines as to what the vision has to be with the glasses themselves before you can even use the bioptic. And they have very strict guidelines about what your peripheral vision must be, even if you're going to use the bioptic. And think of a telescope. When you look through a telescope or a pair of binoculars, you're going to see a very limited view of the world out there. When people use telescopes to see the stars and the moon, it's sometimes hard to find the moon or the stars because the telescopes only can capture so much of the sky at a time. So it's the same with the bioptic. It's not like a pair of glasses where I see everything at one go. It's like looking through a small window and looking at one thing for a brief moment, typically a sign, typically the color of a traffic light. So most of my patients who use a bioptic to drive probably use it less than 5% of the time. That means 95% of the driving, they're still using their glasses and their peripheral vision to be aware of what's going on around them. The bioptic is only used on those instances where they're not sure of the color of the light and they look through the telescope. They're trying to read a sign and they look through the telescope. but because the field is so small, how much you see is so limited, you can only look through the telescope for a few seconds, literally for a few seconds. And in the Virginia rules, the DMV actually specifies that the patient driving with the bioptic must be able to locate and identify whatever they need to see in the bioptic in a 1 to 2 second time period. We actually have to sign off for that and say, yes, this patient has demonstrated that if they're coming up to a sign, they can spot it, and within 1 or 2 seconds of looking in the telescope, tell us what it is, not that they keep looking through it while they're driving. And actually, in Virginia, the DMV tests each person who's going to drive with a bioptic on the road and make sure that they can use it that efficiently. So that's why I say this is tricky. It's not something everybody is going to be able to adjust to and be able to use and adapt to. But it is a tool, it is a strategy, and it is formally recognized both in Maryland and Virginia. But they have very strict rules for who's going to be able to use it, what kind of vision they have, and they have extra testing that's done on the road by the MVA, by the DMV, to make sure that the individual is able to use this bioptic, this telescope, and they can use it for just short periods of time. Now, for people who just want to go to the Kennedy Center and read the surtitles at an opera glasses, those kinds of different telescopes, if you like, are useful, are effective. And that would be something that you could utilize in those settings. I have some people who say, I go to watch my grandchildren and I'm not sure which is my grandson or granddaughter. Well, then something like a pair of binoculars that's mounted onto the glasses, that can work for those kinds of things. You're not driving a car, you're not walking with them, you're just spotting, just like most of us would take binoculars and look at things at a distance. We usually stationarily look through them and then put them down and move forward. So there are things like that as well. All right. I've talked a lot about the very specific tools that I use, the very specific strategies of optical magnification, video magnification, the use of tablets and things like that. What I need to emphasize as well is this whole thing is a process. It's not a quick fix. It's not like saying, I just need to go get a new pair of glasses and I'll find an eye place where they can check me for glasses, get my glasses and get going. Adjusting to changes in vision is a process, and adapting to these changes is a process in itself. And it's emotionally difficult to have to accept that, wow, my vision has changed and it's still changing. And I've been told at best they're going to stabilize it, but I'm never going to go back to that perfect 20/20 vision that I had. And look at everybody else in the world enjoying vision to read and do things and see things so easily. It can be very emotionally distressing to have to deal with even small changes in vision. Now, some people have even more dramatic changes in vision. I do see some people who have conditions of the eyes which could even lead to total blindness. And the thought of not being able to see, they ask people, what are the things you would fear most? People always say, I would hate to think I could lose my vision. That's sort of the biggest fear I think everybody has. And understandably, if you've had good vision all your life, then you know how much you rely on vision and all the beautiful things we see around us using our vision. So the thought of not seeing well, not recognizing faces, not being able to go in a room and know who your friends are and who your family is, it's emotionally distressing. And so this adjustment to having changes to the vision is emotional too. And for that, there are people who need to talk to others who've already been through this and come to terms with it. You almost need to have some therapy, some counseling, and you need to relate to somebody else who's gone through it, who can sort of guide you through it, encourage you through this whole process, and help you get adjusted, because you may not be ready to use a magnifying glass or a video magnifier. You want to see things like you used to, just pick up the paper and read, or look across the street and see who's there. And the thought of having to use a compensatory strategy can be quite distressing emotionally. And this is why the Prevention of Blindness hosts these town hall meetings. And this is why the Prevention of Blindness has low vision resource centers. There's one in Bethesda and there's one in Alexandria, which has visually impaired people, low vision resource coordinators, as we call them, who are there to have you come in and talk about some of the things that happen during the low vision evaluation. After all, I can only spend an hour with each patient that I see, and even that never seems to be enough. Think of it, most of you go to see a doctor nowadays, doesn't matter whether it's an eye doctor or any doctor, your doctors are spending minutes with you. I'm spending everybody's schedule for an hour, and even then, it's sometimes not enough. So I'm often saying to many of my patients is, you now need to come and talk to somebody at the Low Vision Resource Center who can help you, who can guide you through the emotional steps of adjusting, and to revisit some of these strategies, because they are compensatory strategies. So it's not that one strategy fits everybody with macular degeneration and another strategy fits everybody with glaucoma. It doesn't work that way. These are interchangeable strategies, and each of you is unique. Each of you are going to say, well, I can live with that. This is a good compensatory strategy for me, and I can learn to do it this way. And some of you will say, well, I would never be able to do it that way, but you have to find a different strategy. And it's hard to know within an hour what's going to be ideal for everyone. So in my ideal world, I would need to see a patient at least 3 or 4 times before I really begin to understand how you like to do things, and also to understand what strategies are optimum for you and that you feel comfortable doing. So because it's a process, it is useful to come to these low vision resource centers, to talk to these low vision resource coordinators, to attend support group meetings like this, whether it's on Zoom, in person, I think is better. And each of you should know that local to you, whether you're in Virginia or you're in Maryland or you're in DC, there are local support groups. Some of you live in retirement communities and they have support groups for people with low vision, for people who have conditions of the eyes which are chronic and not going to be fixed with glasses alone. And it really is useful to avail yourself of these and to meet other people who've already walked this path, who've had this, and learn from them how they've been able to circumvent their vision changes and come to terms with it, and then adapt these various tools and strategies that I've been talking about. So it is a process. It's definitely a process. We live in the metropolitan Washington, D.C. area, and we're fortunate that we have so many resources available to us. Each of these jurisdictions has a department for the blind and vision impaired, or a division of rehabilitation services, what we call DOORS in Maryland, or a rehab services administration, as it's called in DC. These are state agencies, if you like, which can address some of these issues with you in your homes. so they can come to you at your home and begin to show you how to implement some of these things in your own home. You can come to the exam room, but it's sort of an artificial setting. But sometimes you need somebody to actually come out to your home and say, look, here's how you modify lighting. Here's how you modify contrast. So it's so important to take advantage of the resources we have in this metropolitan area. There are alternatives for transportation. There's something called Metro Access. And it's not like driving your own car, but at least it gives you another way to get around relatively inexpensively. And you have to be qualified by your doctor for this service. I mentioned the talking books from the Library of Congress, and that's done through your local libraries as well. You don't have to go to the Library of Congress, but there's a certification process for that. There is something called the Washington Ear. Again, it's something you can listen to through your internet. They even have a dial-in service where you can dial in and listen to different parts of the newspaper, and they have announcements local for the community, what's available in the DMV for people who are visually impaired. And they even go to some of the plays and theater productions where you're not able to see what's going on the stage, but you can listen to somebody narrate to you what's happening. So these resources are available because we're in the DMV, and you should all become aware of them and take advantage of them. In DC, we have the Columbia Lighthouse for the Blind. They provide orientation and mobility training with a white cane. And they also provide one-on-one training for daily living activities. There are even occupational therapists now who specialize in vision, and they will come out to your homes, or if you're in retirement communities, they can visit you in your apartments and make modifications for lighting and contrast as well. So when I'm seeing a patient, I'm not just interested in giving you a tool and saying, here you are, this fixes your vision, you can do everything. I'm very interested in getting you familiarized with all these different resources that we have. And so you don't feel alone, that you're out there trying to navigate, how am I going to deal with my vision issues? You could be still working and have to have accommodations at work. You could be wondering, can I stay independent in my home, or do I need to move into a retirement community? And of course, I see children, and we have the question of how are they going to get through school and college, and how are we going to modify things? So it takes a village. It takes using all the resources we have in this community. And thank God we live in the DMV, that we have so many resources. But learning about these resources can only occur through these types of Zoom calls, through coming to the low vision resource centers, to going through doors, through meeting with occupational therapists. All of this is what's going to make the whole thing work a lot better for you, rather than trying to navigate it on your own, which is really, really challenging. Okay, I see that it's 1:20 and my voice is beginning to give out as well. So I'm gonna take a break, and I can take questions till what? Till 1:30, is that right, Tara?
Yes, yes, until
Okay.
1:30. I know, because you have patients after that as well.
Yes.
We really appreciate this talk, Dr. Alibhai. And I always say, although I have lived with low vision all my life, but every day I learn something new. And it takes a community. We always learn even from our clients who come to learn something from us, but it's reciprocal. So we encourage you all to come and visit our centers in Bethesda and in Alexandria. To make an appointment, you can call us at 301-951-4444. We also have these virtual events that you can sign up for if you get our newsletter. Again, Town Hall, Tech Talk, Stargardt Group. It's just so many things we can learn from one another. Dr. Alibhai, I can see from the chat, how do you compensate for lack of contrast when walking, especially on steps and colored floors. I have the same problem, so I'd love to
Yeah,
hear from you.
that's a real tricky one, right? And ideally, we want the environment to be optimized, correct? We want steps and curbs to be marked so we know where those edges are. We want good illumination wherever possible at ground level, not necessarily at ceiling level, because sometimes brightness just causes more glare. And, some of our patients have also been using filters. Some of our patients have been using, for example, yellow tinted lenses, which sometimes help with contrast as well. But ultimately, there are some patients, I have to say to them, it may be worth getting a mobility cane. So I know whenever I bring up the word white cane, people think, well, only people who are totally blind should be using a white cane, but that's not true. Anybody who's visually impaired can receive what we call orientation and mobility training and use the cane for areas where, like this, where the contrast might not be good, the lighting might not be good, but it's a tool, it's a strategy, it's a way of being able to figure out how to navigate unsafe areas without falling, because that's what none of us want to fall and get hurt and have secondary problems. So again, it depends on your vision condition. It depends on the environment that you're in. And it depends whether the environment can be modified, whether you can use something simple like a yellow filter, or whether we have to adopt a strategy like a cane.
Thank you. Ashley, could you please make it short so we have other questions as well? Ashley, can you unmute yourself?
Hi, hi, Dr. Alibhai and everybody. I'm hopefully I'm hearable from here.
Yes, you are. Just make it short.
Okay,
Ashley.
yeah. So Happy New Year. Thank you for presenting. And you did really well, Dr. Alibhai. In terms for somebody, yeah, they asked about contrast. I need contrast too to use my vision, although I also have a white cane that I travel with usually. What sometimes helps me is it more so for like if it's a cloudy day or some way or shaded area. I sometimes use like a light, like kind of like a larger flashlight to make more light on the ground for contrast. That might help. Also, if your stairs and things are not marked, I'd recommend contacting the place where you will go, like the building or the streets you're walking in, to see if they could better mark them, because they're supposed to do that from ADA standards. Access board standards. My question for Dr. Alibhai was, Dr. Alibhai, do you have the um, um, digital magnifiers from Optelec in the office too? Or I know that when I was there, you did Freedom Scientific ones. I was just curious if you had the other ones as well. Digital magnifiers are really cool. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think, nowadays, I'm glad Ashley brought this up. I'm going to tell you all that there are different companies that make different tools. And I don't promote one company over the other. I don't sell any of these video magnifiers either. But the low vision resource centers now have the different brands, if you like, of magnifiers. I am trying to make sure that people know that there's a strategy, digital magnification. And then which digital magnifier you use is going to depend on you and your nuances. It's like buying a car. I might say, okay, you have a family of 7 people. I recommend you get a minivan. But then whether you get a Honda minivan or or Toyota minivan, everything, that's going to be, a different consideration. So then you go and look at the different minivans and try them and see what works best for you. In the same way, these video magnifiers have different companies. They have different bells and whistles, but essentially the strategy is the same. So at the low vision resource centers, you can see the Optelec or the Freedom Scientific or whichever brand. Whichever I might be using, the exam room is just an example of a video magnifier. I'm not really saying use Freedom Scientific over Optelec or whatever. So I hope that clarifies that.
Thank you, Dr. Alibhai. I don't see any raised hands or any questions. Oh, here is one. Again, it's the contrast and it's Ashley again. Rachel, can you unmute yourself?
I can, and I put my camera on. I'm actually here in the office with Dr. Alibhai, and I'm one of the people, along with Tara, that staff these resource centers. So I just want to clarify a little bit. We certainly in the resource centers do have several examples of video magnifiers that you're welcome to come in, and we'll work with you one-on-one to try different ones. But what we have is a representation of the different sizes of video magnifiers. We have some that have speech, some that don't, things like that. We certainly don't have every video magnifier by every company available for you to try in our offices. And we have different ones here in Alexandria than are up in Bethesda where Tara is. So we can certainly help you narrow down what types of features and what like size and things like that you're most interested in. And then we can put you in touch with a vendor who sells them, who can then expand the offerings of what they can show you. So I just wanted to clarify that a little bit so that we don't have people coming in with the expectation that we have like every video magnifier available that you can try in our offices. So just a little bit of clarification.
Thank you, Rachel. There is a raised hand. The number ends in 81.
Yeah. Do you have any recommendations for being able to see better at night?
Dr.
That's
Alibhai?
a good question. Yes, being able to see better at night is always going to be a tricky one because, like I mentioned right at the beginning, magnification, lighting, and contrast. So being able to see better at night is a matter of using light, right? If it's in your home, you're making sure you have appropriate illumination in the home. But if you're navigating somewhere, you may have to carry some of these LED flashlights around with you so you can see the ground better and the steps and curbs better. I mean, let's face it, even in a romantic restaurant nowadays, I'm using the light from my smartphone to be able to read the menu. And like I said earlier, most of us seem to have these gadgets. And so if you're carrying a smartphone, remember it usually has a pretty good light in it, but that's a tricky one. That's really a tricky one.
We have two questions. One is in the chat and one is Janice, and then we will end it. In the chat, has there been significant supplements for patients with sudden monocular visions?
I don't know how to answer that because I don't really understand the question.
Okay. I think you will see this patient later on today, so you can ask.
Oh, okay.
You can, okay. Janice?
Dr. Alibhai, thank you. Understanding that we all have a plethora of doctors, we have ophthalmologists and retina physicians and low vision doctors, and each of us, have different cases. In general, can you tell us how often we should see a low vision doctor?
Thank you, Janice. Thank you, Janice. That's always nice to hear from you.
Likewise.
I would love to see all my patients at least every 3 or 4 months to see how they're doing, right? But the practicalities of this nowadays, Janice, it's turning out, I think increasingly my role is becoming to introduce the strategies to get you aware of what's available and then I am relying heavily on the Low Vision Resource Center for people to follow up and have these strategies reinforced. Then, if something is still not working out well, to come back and see me. And the low vision resource navigators are good about prioritizing on our ever-growing cancellation list who should be coming back to see me again. So ideally, Janice, I would really love to see everybody every 4 months or so, just to see how they're doing. Many of you actually adapt so well and are doing well. So I think I see a lot of my patients just once a year, and it's really just to fine tune things. But for people who are really experiencing changes that are still taking place in their vision, I can appreciate that what we might have discussed today in 3 or 4 months, may have changed because the vision has changed. So, it depends really on the person and what their vision situation is.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Dr. Alibhai, it's time, and we really appreciate your presence today at our town hall.
Thank you.
It is being recorded, and we will put it on our YouTube channel later on and send it out tomorrow, the replay. And thank you all for attending. Thank you, Dr. Alibhai, and hope to see you all soon.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.